Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Thursday, June the 8th. I'm Zach
He's
Ewing,
back.
back from my
He's back.
sojourn across the eastern United States. And that's Jim Derry. And this is Bayou Bets. We're here to take you through the latest in Louisiana sports and sports betting. We keep talking about, when things slow down in June and July, and when things have not slowed down yet. I still think they will. But it's so time.
It's so different than, what even 10, 15 years ago, because there was a slow time in sports. I remember, working on the copy desk for however many years ago. It was, you had the slow time. It was easy to go on vacation. You didn't have to worry about anything. News didn't really happen between certain months. And now it's not quite 12 months, but it's pretty darn close. I will say that.
Yeah.
We're getting there.
Yeah. July is still a little slow, at least the first 3 weeks of July. But, just to your point, this is the 27-year anniversary of Warren Morris walk-off homer to win the 1996
posters on my wall right up here
for LSU. And I bring that up not just because we'll be talking LSU baseball today, but because that was the end of the College World Series. It's June 8th. It was over. I mean, that was it. And now, and then LSU football, didn't even break camp until let's say August 1st or somewhere around there. So you had almost 2 months of, it was slow. Like Major League Baseball was really the only thing going on.
They didn't have all these mini camps and OTAs and all that stuff either. Hello, Jerry. Welcome back. No, I mean, it's completely different now. I mean, football guys could go on vacation for 2.5 months. So it's a little different today where they don't get,
days from Jerry's birthday.
It's
Jerry.
It's 4 days away from my wife's birthday, and she's getting all fired up. So she'll be 29 again this year.
I wonder if Jerry will celebrate with LSU going back to the College World Series for the first time in 6 years.
Could happen. Could happen.
Hey, do us a favor and subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Bayou Bets YouTube channel. We broadcast so many different places. We've had trouble growing the channel, but we're at 97 subscribers and would love to get to 100 by the end of today's show. So if you haven't already, if you're on Facebook or you're on the NOLA.com YouTube page, go over to the Bayou Bets page and hit subscribe for us and see if we can't get to 100. Happy birthday to
I will tell her.
Lovely wife.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you, Jerry. You're sounding kind of mellow today. You got kind of those I'm back to work after 2 weeks of traipsing the country kind of blues kind of thing going on. You're like real quiet and mellow. And I even threw
You'll fire me up at some point.
I mean, I threw bait out there in a group text earlier. You didn't even take it. You just been pretty calm today.
You'll fire me up at some point.
I'm sure I will. I'll try. When you start talking about tennis and soccer,
But this trip, man, was exciting. It was great. I'll talk about it. I'll show some photos, but it was exhausting. Like I got up at 3:45 Eastern time on yesterday morning to catch my flight out of Boston back to Atlanta, and then had like a 5-hour. If you ever had a 5-hour layover with 2 kids, that's
not with 2 kids. I've had layovers longer than that, but not with 2 kids. How many miles did you end up driving? I know you rented a car.
Yeah, we rented a car in Kansas City and drove it to Boston. We drove through Canada. It's like 1,750 miles or something total.
That's not as many as I thought. That's a lot.
That's spread out over 6-8 days. It wasn't the most we drove in any one day was like 400, I think.
Okay.
So
we'll get to that segment in a little bit.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Headlines as we are here on Bayou Bets, brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. We mentioned LSU will face Kentucky in the NCAA Super Regionals. The Tigers are pretty heavy favorites. We'll talk about that. In the NBA Finals, the Denver Nuggets have a 2-1 lead on the Miami Heat after last night's Game 3. And Jim, not to spoil anything, but both you and I think Miami is in a rough spot right now. I don't see a lot.
That's putting it kindly.
Yep. I wanted to mention a couple of other things we're not really going to get to, but Oklahoma plays Florida State tonight. It's the Women's College World Series Championship Series. Oklahoma won Game 1 last night to improve to 60-1. Those aren't odds. That's their record.
They couldn't win the game they lost and go 61-0.
I know. Seriously. Yeah. How much does that stick in your craw? And this is.
I mean, John Wooden didn't lose.
Those who follow college softball know Jocelyn Alo, the Hawaiian player for Oklahoma, who just dominated. As soon as she's gone, she's gone, and they're 60-1 and going to be 61-1. They're minus 3,500 to win the national championship now. And then the
Well,
favorite in the Belmont Stakes is
you
14.
know what, 3.5 cents?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
You know what, 3.5 cents?
Yeah, sure. Because they're going to win. If you want 3.5 free cents, go for it. Jim, any take in the Belmont this weekend? You got a pick for us? You've
Yeah.
done well in Triple Crown season.
Angel of Empire.
All right. What are the odds on Angel? 6-1?
7 to, the last I saw was 7-2 or 4-1. I can't remember. I like the horse because that horse actually, with Belmont being a longer race, the longest race of the three, actually the longest race that almost any of these horses will ever run in. This horse, you could tell, had the distance. They were talking about it was a distance kind of horse. And, Mage had that race going on another, I don't know, 50 feet even. I think he would have lost. I mean, and so I just like the distance in this distance race. Now it's hard to tell with Forte, who was going to be the favorite in the Kentucky Derby, who did not run in the Preakness, just because of choice. I think we'll see. Forte is a pretty big favorite, so I'm thinking of probably going to put those two horses in a trifecta box with maybe three others. So we'll see how it works. Not that it's going to win all that money when you put two favorites together, the favorite and the second favorite together. Not going to win a whole, not like the Derby when it was a really nice payday. But yeah, so I that's who I like, and we'll see as we go forward. But those are going to be my bets, and I probably will put Angel of Empire have some win tickets on it as well.
You're going to watch that and the Champions League final on Saturday?
I'm going to be in Baton Rouge, so I'm probably not going to watch any. I mean, I may put it on my phone at some point, but I'll probably be walking back to the car around the time that the Belmont starts is my guess.
You don't have a take on the Champions League, though, is what I'm
asking. It's Man City against Manchester United, right?
I'm actually surprised. It's Man City against Inter Milan, actually.
Okay. Oh, okay. What happened to the two? I thought it was like the Man.
That was the FA Cup final.
Oh, we'll see. I'm semi paying attention.
Different competition. I'm proud of you.
All right, I'm trying.
Messi's coming to MLS too.
I did hear about that, and I'll save my thoughts on that for later.
All right. Okay. Well, look, you're going to be at Alec Box Stadium on Saturday for Game 1. So let's dig into this. LSU, Kentucky. The Tigers are minus 250 here. Pretty steep price. And they're the biggest favorite of any team in any of the super regionals, with the caveat that
you cannot bet. By the way.
Yeah, you cannot bet on Wake Forest, Alabama, because of the, ever since the Alabama betting scandal where their coach got fired and was involved in all of this, you can't bet on any Alabama. They're not in the national title futures market. I don't think anybody expected them to make. At the time that happened, Alabama was like a bubble team. Now they're in the super regionals, so it's kind of become a bigger deal than people thought. Anyway, Wake Forest would probably be a bigger favorite in that series than LSU. But of the 7 super regionals you can actually bet on, LSU is the biggest favorite. Is that justified, Jim?
Yeah. I think that the LSU is I frankly think that either them or Florida are the two best teams in the country right now. I don't know enough about Wake Forest. I did watch them a little bit in their regional. Seemed like they had a fairly easy regional. So I don't know how much you take away from all that. We'll find out. But wouldn't it be funny if Alabama made it to Omaha and went to the championship game and you couldn't even bet on it? Because that is going to happen. They're not going to put odds out on it, I wouldn't think.
Well, you might see some books, and maybe not some of the bigger ones like Caesars or your DraftKings or your FanDuel may stay away from it. But I'll bet you somewhere somebody would lay some odds if it came to that.
Maybe the offshore books.
I mean, it's also hard. If you get to Omaha and you're Alabama, those games, it gets a little bit harder to. I mean, there's going to be so much knowledge, right? The scandal came about because they scratched their starting pitcher a couple of hours before the game. If that happens in Omaha, everybody's going to know about it. Your risk is less.
That's why it's kind of silly to not put them in now. I mean, just put them in. It doesn't make a difference. So, but as far as LSU goes, there's really no value here. I don't think. I think that's about the right number. I think if they were minus 180 or something like that, I might put a little money on it, but I'm certainly not betting Kentucky. Although I don't, I don't discredit Kentucky. I don't think Kentucky comes in without a shot, because they do. Shameless plug here, by the way. We're going to have Cade Beloso is going to be on Datitude, which we're doing this afternoon instead of tomorrow morning because he's not available tomorrow. So we're going to do a live show with Cade Beloso, and we'll have my podcast up. You know, I was going to put it up in the morning, but I think I'm just going to do it all and have it up the whole thing up this evening with my monologue. But Cade will be coming on live on all these same channels at 5:15. So make sure you come back for that. But I just don't think you can't bet on LSU at -250, and I certainly don't want any part of Kentucky. They played 3 times. They had a 3-game series in April, the middle of April. LSU won 2 out of 3. The first one, they were bomb city. They won 16-6. They had 3 home runs. Beloso actually hit 1, and then I think in the second game they lost at the very end. They did something I can't remember exactly how it went at the end, and then they gave it 2 5-run innings. They had 2 5-run innings and still only lost 13-10 in game 2. And then in game number 3, Tommy White got plunked with the bases loaded in the bottom of the 8th. They score the winning run 7-6 and go on to close it out. So these teams are fairly evenly matched, but LSU is certainly especially at Alec Box. And when you go with Skeens, you got to figure they're going to win game 1. And, so then it's just winning 1 out of the next 2.
Well, that's where you start with this, right? Like if there may not be a lot of value on the series line, but if you look here at the game 1 line, it's almost exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's Skeens pitching for LSU. It's weird that LSU is such a big favorite, and yet I almost think they have more pressure on them than Kentucky does in game 1.
Well, here's my question.
Lose game 1, you're in a world of hurt all of a sudden if you're LSU.
Here's my question, and I know it may sound silly, but considering how Jay Johnson played the regional, is there any chance that Paul Skeens doesn't pitch in game 1?
No.
I mean, he hasn't announced. I don't think he's announced it, has he?
No, but I mean, in a super regional, especially if you're in a situation where...
Oh, you don't have to talk me into it. I mean, I think it'd be absolutely moronic if you don't pitch him in game 1.
Because look, if Skeens let's just say he struggles and he goes out in the first inning and gives up a 4 spot, and your team, your hitters look... I don't even think you would do this. But if Skeens just doesn't have it on Friday, there's a possibility that exists that after 40 pitches, you say, hey, let's pull him. Let's try to win Saturday. Then we'll bring Skeens back on Sunday. I don't think they would. No. But like, if you, I don't know, you especially, let's say there's going to be rain this weekend. And I have the days wrong. It's Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But if there's rain this weekend too, there exists a possibility where if you pitch Skeens on Saturday and then the thing doesn't finish until Tuesday, maybe now you can bring him back for an inning of relief.
I'm not going to do that. I don't think you think like that. I think you let him, unless he just gets shellacked. I mean, he's going to be 110 pitches. I mean, that's just...
Yeah. But look, in a super regional setting, you go out and do everything you can to win game 1. And then you have your entire pitching staff. If it works like it did against Tulane last Friday, you pitch Skeens as long as he can go. And then you have your entire staff ready, and you just try to win 1 of the next 2. Like you
just hope that you don't get the same scenario you got last week, where you had starts and stops and postponements and delays, and had LSU lost that series clincher, they would have had to come back and play right away Monday evening. So that wouldn't have been any fun, and then they'd kind of be in a mess right now. It's a really good thing they won that game, saved their bullpen a lot. And as you look at these odds here, I said before this whole thing started, Florida was plus 1,000. I really liked Florida then. I think Florida is the best value, really. Still, I kind of like Tennessee because I think they, no offense to Southern Miss fans, and I know Patrick McGee probably won't like me saying this, but I don't think Southern Miss stands a chance to beat Tennessee. I really don't. So if you consider Tennessee's basically on the precipice of Omaha, and Florida and LSU both have a tougher fight, probably. I think Tennessee is one of my top 2 or 3 values as well on the board.
Yeah, I mean, if you think Tennessee's on the precipice, if Southern Miss doesn't stand a chance, Tennessee's only...
I don't think they do.
They're only minus 145.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's impossible to say that Southern.
Well, I'm not going. You can't say any team is not going to win. I mean, this is not like, how many times have we seen LSU go into a super regional and like they can't lose this thing? What was it, Dallas Baptist 7 or 8 years ago beat them.
Stony Brook was the other one.
Stony Brook, the 4 seed beat them in a regional, and then Stony Brook ended up going to Omaha, if I remember correctly. I know Dallas Baptist did. So I mean, you just weird things happen in college baseball. It's not like a lot of other sports. To me, you think more weird things would happen in college basketball, but they really don't. Not very often. I mean, weird things happening in college baseball happens quite frequently. And sometimes people just don't know. I mean, people see a team, maybe I'm discounting Southern Miss because they're Southern Miss and they play in Conference USA. But, I just think Tennessee is I think Tennessee is a very underrated team that had a stretch that had a longer than people expected stretch of playing poorly, at least poorly to their standards. And I think they're kind of underrated right now. So I look for them to do good things. It wouldn't surprise me at all if they won this thing.
Yeah, I don't think that's a terrible take. Like I do think Tennessee's a good value, 10-1. I wouldn't totally discount Southern Miss. They're playing at home. Played in the Super Regionals last year. That'll be an interesting one. I'll be watching that one. I'll also be watching Wake Forest and Alabama. I'm curious to see. The Demon Deacons have just pulverized everybody in the ACC, which is not the SEC, but it's like the second best thing. And I'm curious to see how they do against an Alabama team that was really kind of a middle of the pack SEC team.
I don't think Alabama's got much of it.
Dominated everybody else.
Yeah, look, watching them play against Troy in that first game where they should have lost, and Troy basically gave the game away, told me a lot of things I needed to know about Alabama, and I just don't think they're good enough to hang with Wake Forest. That's my opinion. Wake Forest they truly are a middle of the road SEC team, if that. They might not even be middle of the road.
Wake Forest has not played an SEC team. They did sweep Clemson, who was the number 4 team in the regular season. I mean, obviously, the ACC is a good conference, and they dominated it. Yeah, but they're not
as good as they used to be.
Team yet.
Yeah.
So,
but they're better than Alabama.
That'll be interesting. Yeah. I think they'll win. Horace is here. What's up, Horace? And we'll talk about that baseball trip in a minute. We're going to move on.
By the way, Zach, before we move on, Spence did a really nice job filling in your absence. So, Mr. Horace,
as I would expect. Yeah.
Yep.
We need Spencer, a regular here on Bayou Bets. And we'll talk NBA Finals Game 4. Look, Game 3 last night, a 15-point win for the Nuggets. Game 1 was an 11-point game win for the Nuggets, and quite frankly, wasn't that close. The outlier so far in this series has been Game 2, where the Heat held on, won in Denver by 3 points, an impressive win. But for me, Jim, and I know you may have different thoughts to get to the same conclusion, but Miami shot 17 of 35 from 3-point range in Game 2 and won by 3. They have shot much worse than that in Games 1 and 3. And I hate to simplify it down to one statistic, but the NBA is a make or miss league. You hear people say that all the time. And Miami, the way that they play and the deficiencies they face in matchups against the Nuggets, they need to shoot above their head in 3-point shooting to have a chance in this series, to have a chance against this team. They did it in Game 2. I'm not saying it can't be done again, but I am pretty confident in saying it cannot be done 3 more times. And that's why the math is very much against Miami. Denver has scored, I think, 1.22 points per possession throughout the playoffs. It's been the same against Miami. Miami hasn't averaged that against anybody. In order to do that, they have to shoot way above average in 3-point shooting. They did it in Game 2. They were able to hold on by 3. Without that, I just don't see a path forward for them.
I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, obviously, you want to make as many threes as you can because that is part of that game. But I think the Heat are better off just having a lower scoring game. What you can't have is 40, 20, 10. You can't have you can't have 2 players hit triple doubles, and you can't, I don't care how big of a star he is, you can't let Jokic score 40 points, have 20 rebounds, and dish 10 assists. To me, the number out of all of those that is the most important is the 10 assists. I mean, I think if Jokic's assist number is 8 or lower, then he'd have a real chance. If it's 8 to 10, it's going to be a tight game, in my opinion. And if it's over 10, I think they don't have a chance because Denver is actually better when Jokic passes the ball. And he didn't pass as much last night as he had been. But, man, he was hitting every. And look, I get the announcers. They think Jokic is they're like calling him like one of the top 3 big men or something that's ever played the game. I'm like, can we let him play a little bit longer before we start talking like that? These announcers, there's so much hyperbole with these guys. But ESPN's awful. But that's a whole nother segment for another show. But I just, you have to be able to slow him down, and they slowed him down in game 2, I thought, and they limited his passing ability in game 2, and they were able to get confidence on their shot because of that. I think their confidence kind of stems from their defense. And when you don't get stops, which you heard Eric Spoelstra talk about at the beginning of the third quarter. We got to string together some stops. I guarantee you that was the talk in there. And they just weren't stringing together stops. And your offense, to me, at least for this team, your offense feeds off your defense. And they just weren't playing very good defense last night.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of saying the same thing. Look, their defense was not any better in game 2, though. My point is, I don't think they can string together enough stops to win this game.
But I don't think they have to have a game like game 2 to win, though. I hear what you're saying. I don't necessarily disagree, but I don't think they have to have that kind of game. They just have to be able to. You can't let Denver get offensive rebounds at the wazoo and then go get one shot on the other end. And that's what happened last night for sure. So
yeah,
you got to find a way to stop
in
that
department. Like
I
just
agree.
don't know. I think the differences in game 2 were 1, the 3-point shooting, and 2, it was fewer possessions. It was a slower tempo game, and because of that, when you combine that with getting 3 points on 17 of those possessions, it makes it a little bit more difficult for Denver to keep up. And so you saw a concerted effort by Denver to play a little bit faster last night. I think there was only like 86 possessions in game 2. There was more like 95 or something last night.
That doesn't benefit them, though.
It benefits Denver because, again, as sports bettors, what we're trying to do here is kind of turn this into as much of a calculated risk as we can.
Yeah.
And so for me, the way you do that is look at it as a math problem. On a per possession basis, Miami is not going to keep up with Denver over a longer haul. But if you limit the number of possessions, the variance increases. Now maybe Miami can keep up with it, especially if they shoot well. I just think the margin for error is so slim, especially when you're playing in Denver, which we will be for at least 2 of the final 4 games if it goes that far. The margin for error is so small for Miami. I don't know. Like, you can limit Jokic's assists, you can limit his points. At some point, Denver's got too many weapons, and they're going to score their points. And look, Miami's played above its head for 3 rounds of the playoffs. I just don't. I don't see a path forward for them.
Yeah. All that being said, though, I think this is going to be the best game of the series. I think this is going to be a super tight game. I like the under. I think it's going to be a defensive battle. I don't necessarily think – I wouldn't be surprised if neither team scored over 100. Eric Spoelstra knows that this is do or die game. I'm not saying the Heat are going to win, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if they cover. And I know I had them to cover yesterday because I thought yesterday would be the tight game, but they're not going to play 2 awful games in a row. I just don't. They're too well coached to do that. So I think that this is going to be a tighter game. I still think the Nuggets win. I know that's a tight spread, and 3.5 doesn't mean the same thing it means in football. But I would probably lean towards taking the Heat here, losing on something just kind of awful towards the end. And again, more than taking the Heat, I really like the under. I think this is going to be a low scoring game.
Yeah, the under has gone 2-1 so far, and you see that over under has, and it's gone. I mean, it's gone way under when it's gone under. It's been down below 200, or I think yesterday they just barely got to 200. It was 203, I think.
Yeah,
104.89. Right?
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. Is that right? 104.8? No, that's
193. No, it was. I thought it was 104. I don't know.
I guess we should probably have the score. It was 109.
Yeah, we probably should.
94. Yeah,
there you go.
Oh
We were way off.
94. I knew it was a 15-point game. So yeah, I look. Here's my question for you: where is the betting value in this series? Because you could go game
there
by
is
game.
none.
I don't have a strong feeling. The Nuggets are minus 800 to win the series. Here's your MVP odds. Jokic is minus 750 to win the MVP.
If I had the money. If I had, he's gonna win the MVP. That's a done deal.
No way around that. Yeah.
I mean, if you want to put $75 on it to win 10, I mean, you're gonna win it.
I mean, it's better than betting Nuggets on the money line at minus 800 for sure. How about this though? Here's a handicap. What about Nuggets minus 2.5 games to finish this thing off on Monday and 5? You get even money for that.
I'm sticking with my prediction. However, that being said, I don't like that bet. I just don't. That's one I would stay away from. I mean, again, it's easy. It's harder for me to look at it objectively because I have both teams already. I've said this before, so I have both teams. I hedged it on Miami when they were plus 410 or whatever, when they were still playing the Celtics. And I got Denver. I think during round 1. So, I mean, I'm not betting anything. I haven't bet anything on this whole series except I bet a few bucks last night that I mean, and when I say a few bucks, like a few bucks. I just don't want to bet into my winnings and lose them. But I just don't think there's value either way here. I mean, it's all going to depend on Game 4. I mean, if they don't win Game 4, they're not winning anymore. Well, I mean, obviously they'd go back to Denver and lose anyway. But it's too tight. I just don't think there's any value on either side here. It's not worth betting.
Yeah. And I'm in the same boat. I have Denver at 20-1 from preseason, and it's just $5 to win 100.
Yeah, that's a good bet.
I'm not hedging. I don't. The Heat.
Yeah, you don't hedge $5. That's not worth
650 or whatever. But I mean, even if it was more than that, I don't see a path forward for the Heat. Could they win another game? Yes. Are they going to win the series? I don't see any path for that. I just don't. So I'm not betting anymore. Maybe on a game by game basis, if one team falls behind, I see a comeback coming. Maybe.
I just don't see value again. I mean, to me, these are the odds, but those are basically the odds for Game 4, right? I mean, they're not going to win Game 5. They're not. I mean, I don't know what the spread's going to be. It'd probably be like 9 or something. I'm not saying I would take the -9 in a potential Game 5 that could decide the series, but I just don't. If they don't win Game 4, they're not going to win Game 5. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I think that's fair. So maybe some targets there. The other thing going on, OTAs for the Saints. They had their second OTA this week, and Michael Thomas was back. We finally saw him back. Whether he stays back, he was not practicing in full. He was not in the full 11-on-11 sessions, but he was running some routes. He was catching some passes, and frankly, like this just continues an off season that's been really very positive, very optimistic for the Saints.
Yeah, well, so was last off season.
Yes, it was.
Michael Thomas, I think, wasn't he practicing this time last year?
Everybody's a winner in April. Everybody thinks they're going to be good in April. And
look, we're going to get into the ins and outs of the Saints as we get closer to the end of July, and when I come back from vacation and really dive into over and unders and all that stuff. But I'm sorry, but I'm not going to get excited about Michael Thomas returning to voluntary practice. I mean, I guess the fact that he's out there when he doesn't have to be is a good thing. But anybody who, fool me once, fool me twice, you fool me a third time, I'm a moron. And, I've been called a moron before. I'd like to think that I'm not one, but I'm not going to be fooled again. Well, let me wait and see what he does and get out there. Yeah, I saw that. But, you put these numbers on the board. I've said this multiple times as well. I don't think any of these numbers are changing anytime soon. There's no reason to bet any of these numbers whatsoever. The only thing that may change a little bit, you may see that Super Bowl number tick down just a tinge. Maybe it goes to 33 or 32, but they don't usually do 33s and 32s this time of year. There's no reason. It's not like last year. Again, when you had the 7.5 over under win total, it didn't hit. But to me, that was a great value. Again, didn't hit. I understand that it didn't hit, but we always talk about value on this show. And 7.5 over last year seemed like a no-brainer, easy value to make. Right now, it's 9.5. Maybe it goes to 9. I don't know, but there's absolutely no reason to bet that number, any of these numbers right now, because the Saints numbers aren't changing. I don't think at all until they start the season.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, a couple of other.
You could just say this graphic and not have to edit it.
Yeah, well, it is. It is kind of nice. You just change the headline. A couple of other things around the NFL. Bryce Young was named the number 1 quarterback in Carolina to the surprise of no one.
Shocker.
And then the Vikings are set to release Dalvin Cook tomorrow. They're going to try to trade him one more time today, and if they can't, and it seems they've been trying to do it with no success, then they'll release him tomorrow, which number one shows how little teams value running backs once they hit a certain age.
Or it could be the Vikings are inept.
The Vikings are also shopping Danielle Hunter, the former LSU defensive end, who could
That's
help the
insane.
Saints. The Saints still have some salary cap room for the next year. Do you think they're done adding? Could we see a major add in the next month or so for
It's
New
not
Orleans?
the Saints' MO, is it? I mean, sure they could, but it's not what they do. I mean, it's fun for fans to get out there and speculate and say, God, just think if this team had Dalvin Cook. And I saw Mike Triplett post something on Twitter that the Saints are set at running back. They've got plenty of depth there. I don't know what pipe he's smoking, but he's way wrong on that. So Dalvin Cook would be an excellent ad if they could find a way to make it work. Because, again, how many times do we have to say, we don't know how long Alvin Kamara is going to be gone. And at 30 years old, even when he comes back, he's no locked. I mean, he played like crap last year. He was terrible last year, I thought. So the fact that he's going to miss half the season most likely and then come back and do what? I mean, so you're basically talking about, your free agent signing and your rookie that you got in the third round, and that's pretty much it. So sure, they could use Dalvin Cook, but that's not what this team does. They don't go out and sign big names very often. If they do, it's once every 2 or 3 years. So I don't think that they're going to do this. I'd actually, if you could find a way to make Danielle Hunter fit and make him want to play here. I mean, to me, that's probably if they trade him, I don't know what his salary is, remaining salary. I don't know what the Saints would have to be on the hook for. The Saints are in pretty good shape. You don't say this very often cap wise, but I don't know, man. Trav's excited about Michael Thomas. I just said the same way, same thing. Hopeful if you're a Saints fan, not expecting anything. But as far as trades go or big free agent signings, there will be additions to this team that will end up contributing to this team. But I don't think it's going to be Dalvin Cook or Danielle Hunter.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook seems very unlikely to me. I mean, look, if you don't think Alvin Kamara has a lot of good years left, I don't see why you would think Dalvin Cook has a lot of good years left.
Well, he's only 27, right?
Star. Yeah, I mean, but he's got a lot of miles on those legs.
Well,
and
he's also
had
been
an injury history in the past.
I was going to say he's been hurt, so he hasn't played nearly as many games as Kamara.
So I question that. I think you drafted Kendry Miller, you signed Jamal Williams. Kamara's not going to get suspended for the entire season. You're going to have him at some point. I mean, I think there is some depth there. So I don't see spending your salary cap room on that. Danielle Hunter, I could certainly see the Saints possibly being a team that targets him. That's a spot where they could use some help.
I think, well, I don't disagree with that, but I mean, I think they need to go get some other realistically, a guy that's realistically going to contribute at running back. I don't think their depth is strong at running back at all. I completely disagree with that. I know we've been going through this for months now, and I talked about it going into the draft. I don't understand why anyone thinks their running back depth is good, because it's not. And I think Kamara is going to be, I'm going to say just short of the word worthless. I don't think Alvin Kamara can contribute hardly anything to this team. You can mark this down. I really don't. I don't think Kamara is going to contribute very much to this team at all this season at any point.
All right, Zoe, mark it down. Producer Zoe's going to mark that down. We'll June the 8th, Jim's calling it. Alvin Kamara is going to be next to worthless this season.
I said short, just short of worthless.
Just short of worthless. Okay.
Which is pretty much what he was last year, by the way. He was just short of worthless.
He did not have a good
season.
So
in other words, I predict a season similar to last year.
And I mean, those are two different things too. To say the Saints couldn't add to their running back depth, yes, they could. But like last year, Latavius Murray was on the street, right? I mean, you could just sign a body, right? He's with the Bills now, I think. But you could just go sign a body. Paying a bunch of money to Dalvin Cook and committing a couple of big years worth of salary to the guy is different than saying, hey, we need some more running back depth. Those are two different questions.
So that's true. That's true. But they're not going to sign Dalvin Cook, so it ain't going to happen.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're. Yeah, that's.
And Michael Thomas, woohoo! We hope he's back. No kidding.
Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow was hitting home runs in batting practice for the Reds. You see that? He looks good in baseball.
Oof.
You don't think so?
Man, no, it looks weird.
He does. But he hit a home run in batting practice, and like I don't know. I think it's cool. People say injury concerns, but
That jersey just bothers me.
is he going to hurt himself playing golf? I mean, it's just batting practice, just swinging.
Yeah, if you were a Bengals fan, I mean, it's cool and all. I mean, like Drew Brees went out and like played a celebrity softball game against the Zephyrs or whatever back in the day. But I mean, do you really want your star quarterback out there trying to hit? I mean, I don't think.
No, I don't have a problem with it. Are you not going to let him play golf either? I mean,
you don't have control over that unless you put it in his contract. But I mean, golf is one thing. I don't know. Yeah,
I think it's fine. Yeah, Elray, get up.
Is that my quarterback? I don't.
Number one. These guys throwing BP are throwing like 65 miles an hour. They're not like, and you're going to be able to get out of the way of it. Number two, they're just lobbing it in there. Nobody gets hit in BP. So
It'd be pretty funny though if like, maybe the Reds pitching batting practice pitcher is a Steelers fan.
I did
you
see
don't know.
that would be funny. A little intentional spiking. I don't want to kill the guy.
Maybe he's a Browns fan. Who knows?
That'd be something. I did get to see some BP. I've been on this trip. Haven't been on Bayou Bets in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm jealous.
Yeah, it was a good trip. We went with my dad and my here's a photo of us at Kansas City where it all started. My dad and my two sons. My dad's 80. My sons are 10 and 7. And I mean, honestly, we went Kansas City. This is still in Kansas City here. We went to St. Louis. Just my dad and my boys. Went to Wrigley.
Yeah, I'm really jealous. Yeah. And they won what, 1-0?
The Cubs won that game too. They did.
That's a rarity.
Yeah.
Now you got the beer in the photo.
Shohei Ohtani hit 2 homers for the Angels in this game. Then we went to Cooperstown. And then we ended up at Fenway on a cold day. It was cold on Sunday.
I would love that.
But it was a lot of fun, man. And the coolest part about it was my sons are in love with the game of baseball right now. Like my wife took them to the library today, their first day back, and I get like an email of all the books they checked out, automatically from the library and what day they're due and stuff. They got like 17 baseball books each. They're just like.
Now I'm really jealous because
they're obsessed with it. They're asking me questions about it. They want to watch games on TV. It won't last. But like as a dad who loves baseball, the trip was everything I could dream.
Soak it up because I got 2 girls at home. The 12-year-old couldn't care if baseball existed. And the other one asked me the other day when the Heat and Nuggets were playing, is that the Cubs? So that's where I stand at home.
Go Cubs, go.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of baseball, real quick, what are you looking at between now and let's say the All-Star break in the baseball market?
I think it's funny because all those big teams that we were talking about, the surprising teams like the Pirates were rolling. They're not rolling nearly as much anymore. The Astros are starting to rise. The cream's coming towards the top. I still don't understand why the Padres are plus 1,400. They're terrible, or maybe terrible is a little too strong.
And then.
A little too strong. The Rays at plus 750 is a little off kilter for me.
Maybe.
The Yankees at plus 1,200. They're going to lose Aaron Judge for a month. I don't know. I usually like to pick a team this time of year and get me a future or two, but I don't see anything that I really like. I still think the Braves are the best team in baseball. Even better than the Astros. The Dodgers at plus 550 is ridiculous. They're not their pitching staff is a mess, especially the back end of it. I mean, Syndergaard went on the IL and they're like, oh God, what do we do now? I mean, because they don't have anyone. I mean, they're a mess right now.
I mean, the Dodgers are the team that's going to go out and pay whatever it costs for the top starter on the trade market. What I'm looking for is really some of these teams, like the Padres are probably the best example. They're still 5 games under 500. All this talent that they've acquired. Is there going to be a surprise seller at the trade deadline? Not that the Padres
there always is
Juan Soto.
There always is.
But could they trade off some pieces because they're out of contention and try to add for a run for next year? The Texas Rangers having a great year. They're 16-1 to win the World Series. But they lost DeGrom.
Yeah, that's it.
The top end pitching is not what it is for the other teams. Their bullpen's not great. They're very hot. They got a great lineup. But can they keep it up with the Astros? So it's interesting, man. It's just not a year where I think you can pick a clear-cut favorite.
Ask me again at the All-Star break. To me, you usually can find a really good value then, and we'll have more numbers than just this on the board because I like digging way deep. I know they did, last year you get the Phillies at I think they were 2,700 about this time last year, or right at the All-Star break. You could still get them cheap at a really good price. So ask me again later. We'll come up with something, but I don't think it's going to be Astros again. Again, I think the Braves are the best team in baseball. Does that mean they make it all the way? Their pitching's got to hold up too. We'll see.
Yeah, you know what I like better than anything is looking at division markets at this time of year.
Yeah.
Because the playoffs are a whole nother thing. Because look, the Braves are the best team. They're going to get into the playoffs. Or the Astros, you could argue the Astros are the best team too. Those teams are going to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
But who's to say that they won't run into somebody hot and lose 3-1 in the division series like the Braves did last year? I mean, you just can't predict those real short series very easily. So
I agree.
I kind of like looking at those division markets. Other things I kind of like looking at. Look, it's a great weekend in the sports world, and we've talked about some of it. You get college softball, college baseball, the Belmont Stakes. You got NBA finals. Of course, you're snoring at NBA finals.
I was trying to wake up.
Okay.
I know what's coming.
But I do want to call people's attention to a couple of other things. And one, it made a big headline this week, and that's Lionel Messi to MLS, which to me is every bit on the scale of when David Beckham signed with MLS 15 years ago, maybe even more so, because Messi legitimately has an argument to be second best player ever behind Pele. Okay. And when Pele came, U.S. soccer scene was in its infancy, and he was pretty advanced in age, and the league wasn't very good, and it was kind of a sideshow more than anything. The U.S. now has 15 soccer-only stadiums. It now has a burgeoning league that's been around for 25 years and is adding teams, is making money. And I'm curious to see how this works. I mean, every Inter-Miami game for the rest of the season, home and away, has now sold out less than 24 hours since the Messi announcement, and they're in last place. I mean, people want to see this guy. You got the World Cup coming here in 2026. So I think soccer will take another step forward in this country with this announcement. And then the other thing I want to call people's attention to is the French Open in tennis. And we haven't talked a lot about it, but this tennis match tomorrow morning, I think it's at around 8:30 our time in the morning. Novak Djokovic and Carlos Alcaraz. Djokovic is an underdog. Alcaraz is like minus 210 in this match. You have a guy who is in Novak Djokovic, who has a legitimate argument to be the best tennis player of all time. And he's facing kind of the next big thing here on his best surface in clay. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I think I actually like Alcaraz, even though you never get Djokovic at plus 175. I don't think I'm going to bet it because I think Alcaraz pulls it off.
Here's my question. What's super impressive is Djokovic. He's going to play tennis and then go play basketball right after for the Nuggets?
The Joker and then the Joker. Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, what an athlete.
Across the Atlantic.
I will say this, and I'll give you fodder for later. The 7-year-old daughter who I was just asking, who was asking me is at the Cubs when the Nuggets and Heat were playing, she knows who Messi is. So there's something to be said for that. I mean, both my kids know who Messi is. They don't know what he looks like or what team he played for or whatever, but they know they know Messi plays soccer. So there's something to be said for that.
Jim, who did Messi play for this past season?
Argentina.
He did, but club team.
Oh, I thought you meant, I don't know.
He did play for
wait, hold on.
He won the World Cup with Argentina, but
I forgot.
He was playing for Barcelona most recently. Yeah.
Okay.
So we guessed Real Madrid. That's a good guess, but no, actually their biggest rival, Barcelona.
Right country.
And previous to that, it was for Paris Saint-Germain.
All right, let's move on because we got another show to do. We got another show to do
all right,
in
Jim.
a little bit.
Last thing we haven't talked about, U.S. Open is in golf next week, but that is not the biggest news in the golf world. The LIV Tour, the Saudi-backed LIV Tour that everyone said was the worst thing ever, and the PGA basically crucified through the press last year. Well, now they're merging with the PGA, and that's kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
It's one of these things where everybody's making this big deal about it. I'm actually seeing this. They're talking about this for days now. This is like the third day of news cycle, and I've seen it on national news. They're talking about this. I mean, it's not nearly as big of a deal as everyone seems to make it out to be. People like talking about it because, hey, you know, the Live Tour was this evil thing that was going to face with the PGA Tour, and they were buying all these players for hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, good Lord, didn't they give Phil Mickelson like $200 million or something? Who the hell wants Phil Mickelson? That's a whole nother story. But the fact is that a year from now, no one's even going to talk about the Live Tour anymore. People will say the Live Tour, you'll get 50% of golf fans saying, "Oh yeah, I remember them." And it's kind of going to be like when the USFL died in 1986 or whenever the hell it was, or 1985, and they had this antitrust lawsuit against the NFL and they won $1. No one talked about the USFL again until they finally came back, and some could argue they're not talking about them now. Did you know New Orleans had a team, by the way? But that being said, look, no one's going to win. No one wins here. Liv doesn't win because they lost $1 billion, even though there are some, let's just say, cuckoo birds out there saying, "Oh, Liv got him. Liv got him." You didn't get anything. They lost $1 billion, even though the Saudis, you know, $1 billion is probably like $100 to you and me. They don't care about it. They still lost. Meanwhile, the PGA Tour's got to eat crow, and they got to bring in these players, and these players are going to get together. And the Brooks Koepkas of the world are going to play with the Rory McIlroys of the world. And Rory is going to be jealous because Brooks got $400 million. And Brooks is going to be like, "Oh, I got to come back to these people who hate me and play every week." It's a no-win situation. But in the grand scheme of things, it's still not nearly a big a deal as everyone wants to make it out to be. Oh, you forgot to put the Euro Tour merge too. Big whoop. No one's going to be talking about this 6 months, especially a year from now.
I think you're right from a fan perspective. I think as fans, we'll kind of get used to this new merged tour, and we'll still tune in for the big tournaments, and we'll still largely ignore, you know, the Canadian Open that's going on this week. The only place I'll disagree is I think was there a big winner in this? Probably not. Although you could argue the players who went to Live and got that bag and now get basically,
but not to Live themselves.
Yeah, right. But I think the biggest loser is very clear, and that's the PGA Tour. They end up with a bunch of egg on their faces. I mean, they told us last year that the Saudis and the Royal, what is it, the Royal something fund, the RIF is what it's called, is
the evil Saudis is what I call them.
They're trying, you know, Khashoggi was murdered, and the Saudis are trying to cover this up by getting into the world of sports and making people think they're normal. And I happen to agree with all of that. And now the PGA has just shrugged its shoulders and said, "Well, if we would like some of that money too." And it tells me the PGA was maybe in more financial trouble than they thought, or they were afraid that they were going to lose some of their statuses. And so, as far as what type of organization they are and what taxes they're exempt from and those sorts of things. And so I think the PGA Tour and Jay Monahan, their commissioner, end up looking weak, and they capitulated, and they basically gave into what they told everyone else that they shouldn't give into, and it makes them look really bad. And I don't know where this goes going forward. I think from a fan perspective, like you said, maybe not a big difference, but I think we could see further shakeups down the road in the way golf is organized.
Well, it's going to start with Jay Monahan being fired. That's going to be the first thing that's going to happen. That's going to happen soon. But, you know, it started with the PGA feeling like they had to force these elevated events where there's a minimum $20 million prize, and I forget how many events, but they never had that before. And they're basically forcing the players to play in this. And so that's where they started losing their money. And soon after they decided to do this is when they started realizing, hey, we can't do this by themselves. But at the same time, there were a lot of people inside of golf calling for this merger. And I guess that's all Liv really wanted in the grand scheme of things. But we'll see how long it takes for the players from one side to get along with the players from the other, because don't think they're all going to be friends and buddies and be eating dinner together again, because it's not going to happen anytime soon.
No, I mean, I think if the Saudis had tried to invest in the PGA Tour 3 years ago, the PGA Tour would have been a flat no. Now they got what they wanted. So to me, the Saudis won, which I think is probably bad for all of us. But the golf itself will not suffer.
I will say, lastly, I don't think anyone won, but the PGA, holier than thou, rich boy club realizes, guess what? We ain't as good or as big as we thought we were. And maybe it is good that they got knocked down a peg, and maybe they'll start paying attention to what's going on around them, but I doubt it.
Yeah, certainly. Look, we still got about 20 of you watching, and we're still stuck on 97 YouTube subscribers. So if you are watching and you're not subscribed to the Bayou Bets YouTube channel, go over there and hit like and hit subscribe for us. We're trying to get up to 100 and grow from there. And hopefully by Monday, we will be there. We'll see you guys Monday at 4. And Jim, you're about to record this, but you got a special datitude coming up for LSU baseball as well.
5:15 p.m. It's going to be live, actually. We're going to just do datitude on a Thursday afternoon. In fact, I think it's the first time we've ever done that, had an afternoon datitude, but we're going to do it today. Cade Beloso, LSU designated hitter, Cade Beloso is going to be on the show. I've known him for quite some time. I covered him at John Curtis. And we're going to go through and get his thoughts on the upcoming series and, talk about him a little bit as well and get to know Cade. It's been an interesting run for him. He came out gangbusters as a freshman, and then had a rough sophomore season, had an injury in, I believe, the COVID year or the year after, and then he's revived himself as a graduate student this year. So what's he going to do after LSU? How much is he, how much does he think about Omaha? All these questions are going to come up. Cade Beloso coming up on Datitude in just about 25 minutes.
Yeah, so tune back in on these same channels and check out Datitude. And then we'll be back 4 o'clock on Monday. More NBA Finals talk. We'll see if LSU is in Omaha by that point, or they may just have one more game. In fact, that game 3 might be going on during our show if there is a game 3. I think it starts at 2, so we'll follow that as well and maybe get some live odds in there. We'll see you then right here on these same channels. Until then, thanks for watching Bayou Bets. For our producer, Zoe Collins-Rath, and Jim Derry, I'm Zach Ewing. See you next time.